The steel target stood at 3,500 meters, an impossible distance. No human alive can hit it consistently, Sergeant Major Blackwood declared, his voice dripping with certainty as trainees nodded in agreement. No one noticed the lone figure on the distant ridge, setting up with methodical precision. In the moment between Blackwood's smirk and his next breath, the target exploded into fragments. Confusion rippled through the group. They hadn't even heard a shot. 3 seconds later, the distinctive crack echoed across the valley. Blackwood's face drained of color as he whispered, "She's back." From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, consider subscribing for more tales of extraordinary courage in the face of betrayal. The morning sun sliced across the Kadara Special Operations Training Facility, illuminating dust particles hanging in the desert air. 20 elite snipers sat in neat rows before Sergeant Major Thaddeus Blackwood, whose campaign ribbons and combat badges created a colorful tapestry across his chest. His weather-beaten face bore the hallmarks of decades in harsh environments, and his reputation preceded him like a shadow. The most decorated sniper instructor in the program's history, Blackwood had trained 3 generations of the military's deadliest long-range specialists. "Gentlemen," Blackwood announced, pacing with deliberate steps that kicked up small clouds of dust, "today we separate the legends from the liars." His weathered face cracked into a smirk. "Every marksman thinks they're special until they meet the impossible." He gestured toward a distant steel plate barely visible on the mountainside, shimmering in the heat mirage at 3,500 meters. Most of the trainees squinted, struggling to even locate the target with their naked eyes. "Physics doesn't care about your ego," he continued. "No human alive can hit that target consistently at that range. That's why we call it the humbler. But today, we'll work our way up. Start building the fundamentals that separate professionals from amateurs." The trainees nodded solemnly, all except for Lieutenant Aviva Nix, who sat motionless at the back, expression unreadable behind specialized ballistic sunglasses. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight regulation bun, and unlike the others who leaned forward eagerly, she maintained perfect posture, still as a statue. Where others wore standard issue gear, her equipment showed subtle modifications, worn but meticulously maintained. Blackwood began calling out names for the first round of attempts at a more reasonable 800-meter target. When he asked for volunteers for a 1,200-meter challenge, Aviva's hand raised slightly, but Blackwood's gaze deliberately swept past her as though she were invisible. "Specialist Donovan, you're up," he called, pointing to a broad-shouldered man 3 rows ahead of Aviva. From a distance, Captain Lazaro Reyes watched the proceedings through binoculars, his posture stiffening when he spotted Aviva among the trainees. His hand moved instinctively to the secure phone at his belt, and he stepped away from the observation post. "Sir, we have a situation," he said quietly into the device. "She's here." The voice on the other end responded with a single question, and Reyes glanced back toward the training ground. "Yes, sir. Confirmed. Lieutenant Nix. What do you want me to do?" One by one, the elite trainees attempted their shots at the intermediate targets, each managing respectable groupings but failing as the distances increased beyond 1,500 meters. Blackwood's mockery grew more pointed with each failure. "This is why we train, gentlemen," he announced, an edge of condescension in his voice. "So you don't waste ammunition in the field on fairy tale shots. So you know when to call in air support instead of trying to be the hero who makes the impossible shot." Specialist Talon Merrick, a lean, observant trainee with piercing hazel eyes, noticed when Aviva quietly gathered her equipment and slipped away from the group. His gaze followed her retreating form with curious intensity, noting the way she moved with uncommon efficiency, no motion wasted. As Aviva walked across the perimeter of the training ground, brief flashes crossed her mind like lightning, medals being stripped from her uniform in a sterile conference room, newspaper headlines screaming, "Mission disaster, Special Forces operation compromised." 5 flag-draped coffins arranged in perfect formation, a commanding officer refusing to make eye contact as he read prepared statements denouncing her actions. Her jaw tightened imperceptibly as she moved with purpose toward the vehicle staging area. 4,000 meters from the training grounds, Aviva methodically established her position on a rocky ridge overlooking the entire facility. The vantage point offered clear sightlines to both the training area and the impossible target while keeping her concealed from casual observation. Each movement was precise, economical, practiced over thousands of repetitions in environments far more hostile than this. From a worn case with partially scratched-off foreign military markings, she removed components of a custom-built rifle system. The weapon didn't match any standard military inventory, its parts collected from specialized manufacturers across 3 continents. She assembled it with the fluid efficiency of someone who could perform the task blindfolded. Through her high-powered spotting scope, Aviva observed Blackwood continuing his lesson, gesturing dramatically toward the impossible target as trainees struggled with much closer objectives. She watched as Captain Reyes paced nearby, phone still pressed to his ear, occasionally glancing toward the surrounding ridgelines. "Sir, it's her. She's here," Reyes whispered urgently into the secure line. "I don't know what she's planning, but given her history, we should consider evacuating the range. What do you want me to do?" As Aviva assembled her rifle, her fingers traced 5 names etched into the custom stock, call signs of operators who never returned from Operation Shadowfall. The memory surfaced unbidden, night vision illuminating a bunker that shouldn't have been there according to their intelligence, enemies who were somehow prepared for their exact approach, the radio mysteriously dead when they called for extraction. "They told us it was a rescue mission," she whispered to herself, watching Reyes through her scope. "But we were never meant to come back, were we, Captain?" With preternatural focus, she calculated the complex variables that would affect a shot at this extreme distance: wind speed and direction at multiple elevations, temperature gradients, humidity, barometric pressure, the Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation, spin drift of the bullet. She made minute adjustments to her scope and rifle configuration, compensating for factors most snipers didn't even consider. The target occasionally disappeared in heat waves rising from the valley floor, requiring perfect timing and patience beyond what most humans could maintain. Aviva's breathing slowed to a controlled rhythm, 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out. Her heart rate decreased to 40 beats per minute through deliberate autonomic control. Below, Specialist Merrick completed his assigned shots and returned to the observation area. Unlike the others watching Blackwood's continuing lecture, Merrick scanned the surrounding ridgelines, his instincts telling him something was happening beyond the scheduled training. For a brief moment, his gaze passed over Aviva's position, then moved on without recognition, though a subtle frown formed on his face. "Some say the record confirmed kill in combat was just over 3,500 meters, Blackwood was saying, voice carrying across the training ground. "I say that's statistical anomaly and blind luck, not skill. You want to be professionals? Focus on consistent performance at achievable distances." Aviva finished her calculations, making final adjustments for the mild crosswind that had just picked up. Her breathing slowed even further as she eased into position behind the rifle, becoming one with the weapon and the earth beneath her. Years of training had taught her to read the environment like others read books, the subtle movement of distant foliage indicating wind patterns, the way heat distortion affected visibility in predictable waves, the barely perceptible movement of the target stand from thermal expansion as the day warmed. On the training ground, Blackwood had gathered the trainees around him for his concluding remarks. "Listen carefully, because this might save your life someday. Know your limitations. Don't attempt shots you can't make consistently. That steel plate out there at 3,500 meters, the impossible, it's there to remind you that some things remain beyond human capability, no matter what legends claim." A black SUV with government plates pulled up to the edge of the training area, and Captain Reyes moved quickly to greet its occupants. A tall, distinguished man in his late 50s emerged, General Hargrove, head of Special Operations Command, flanked by 2 serious-looking aides carrying secure tablets. "Some legends claim there was once a shooter who could hit this distance," Blackwood continued, unaware of the general's arrival. "Ghost," they called her, supposedly made confirmed kills at ranges that defy physics. He chuckled dismissively. "But ghosts aren't real, and neither are fairy tales about impossible shots. Trust the science, trust your training, and never bet lives on myths." On the distant ridge, Aviva entered an almost meditative state. The world around her fell away until there existed only 3 points in her universe: herself, the rifle, and the distant target. She took one final measured breath, held it at the precise moment between heartbeats when her body was most still, and squeezed the trigger with perfect pressure. The rifle discharged, the recoil absorbed efficiently by her positioning and the weapon's custom compensation system. Through her scope, she tracked the bullet's path as it began its journey across the valley, cutting through layers of air density, riding wind currents, fighting gravity's pull in a carefully calculated trajectory. At the training range, Blackwood was mid-sentence when the steel target erupted with a metallic crack that echoed across the valley. Fragments of steel scattered in all directions, the plate obliterated rather than simply struck. For a moment, confused silence fell over the group. The trainees looked around in bewilderment. No one had fired, and they hadn't even heard a shot. 3 seconds later, the distinctive boom of a high-powered rifle rolled across the training ground, the sound delayed by the vast distance it had to travel. Chaos erupted among the trainees as Blackwood stood frozen, his face draining of color. Some dropped instinctively to prone positions, others reached for weapons, scanning for threats. Only Blackwood remained still, his eyes fixed on the shattered remains of the impossible target. "Clear the range," Captain Reyes shouted, suddenly alert. "Everyone inside the bunker, now!" As the trainees scrambled toward the reinforced shelter, General Hargrove remained calmly in place, looking not at the shattered target, but toward the distant ridgeline with something like recognition in his eyes. "Belay that order," the general said quietly, his voice carrying authority that instantly halted the frantic movement. "No one is in danger here." Blackwood finally broke his stunned silence. "Sir, we have an unknown shooter with capabilities beyond anything I've ever seen. We need to lock down and call in QRF." "The shooter isn't unknown to me, Sergeant Major," Hargrove replied. He nodded to one of his aides who distributed sealed folders to the senior personnel present. "And after you read this, she won't be unknown to you either." 3 years ago, Hargrove's voice cut through the commotion. A classified operation codenamed Shadowfall was compromised by someone in this command. 5 operators died. 1 survived. Blackwood's expression shifted from shock to guilty recognition, his eyes darting toward the distant ridgeline. "That survivor was falsely blamed," Hargrove continued, nodding to an aide who distributed sealed folders to the assembled officers. "Until yesterday, when new evidence came to light." The senior instructors opened their folders and began reviewing the contents with increasing disbelief. Security footage appeared on tactical tablets, showing Blackwood meeting with foreign operatives days before the failed operation. Documents detailed financial transfers to offshore accounts. Communication logs revealed classified operational details being transmitted through encrypted channels. As comprehension dawned among the staff, Blackwood lunged for his sidearm. Before anyone could react, a red laser dot appeared centered on his chest. "I wouldn't," General Hargrove said calmly. "Lieutenant Nix has already demonstrated her capabilities today." 2 military police officers approached from the command building and took positions on either side of Blackwood, who stood rigid with fury and fear. "Sir," Specialist Merrick asked quietly, having edged closer to the general during the confrontation. "Who is she?" General Hargrove's voice carried across the suddenly silent range. "Lieutenant Aviva Nix, the most decorated marksman in special operations history, until we betrayed her." The general turned to address the assembled trainees. 3 years ago, Lieutenant Nix led a 6-person team on Operation Shadowfall, a high-priority extraction mission. Intelligence suggested American hostages were being held in a remote compound. Upon infiltration, they discovered not hostages but an ambush. 5 operators were killed. Lieutenant Nix survived by extraordinary skill and determination, fighting her way out against overwhelming odds. Hargrove's face darkened as he continued. When she returned, rather than receiving proper medical treatment and recognition, she was accused of negligence and betrayal. Evidence was fabricated suggesting she had compromised the mission. Her security clearance was revoked, her medals stripped, her career destroyed. Captain Reyes stepped forward, his posture stiff with formal military bearing. "Why is she here now, sir?" "Because yesterday, intelligence assets recovered this," the general replied, holding up a data drive. Indisputable evidence that Sergeant Major Blackwood sold out that team. He provided mission details to foreign interests for financial gain, resulting in the deaths of 5 operators. Blackwood, still with the red dot trained on his chest, finally broke his silence. "You have no proof that will stand up in court. I know how this works. I'll be quietly discharged, maybe serve minimal time in a minimum security facility. These things get buried. They always do." "Not this time," General Hargrove replied. "Lieutenant Nix didn't just bring us evidence of your treason. She brought us the names of everyone involved in the conspiracy." At that moment, a transport helicopter appeared over the ridge where Aviva had positioned herself. As the trainees watched, the aircraft touched down briefly before ascending again, now with a passenger on board. "Specialist Merrick," the general said, Assemble the trainees in the main briefing room in 30 minutes. They deserve to hear the full truth of what happened 3 years ago and why it matters to their training today. As the trainees filed toward the facility buildings, Blackwood was escorted away in handcuffs by the military police. General Hargrove remained in place, looking toward the helicopter as it approached the landing pad adjacent to the command center. "Captain Reyes," he said without turning, "you've been conspicuously silent since we arrived." Reyes swallowed visibly. "Sir, I was just following protocol when I reported Lieutenant Nix's presence." "Indeed. And 3 years ago, were you also just following protocol when you delayed the rescue team that might have saved those 5 operators?" Before Reyes could respond, the general continued. "Lieutenant Nix provided quite detailed records, Captain. Records that include your communications with Blackwood before, during, and after Shadowfall." Reyes's hand moved subtly toward his sidearm, but before he could draw, Merrick tackled him from behind. The weapon clattered to the ground as Merrick efficiently secured the captain's wrists with plastic restraints. "Good reaction, Specialist," Hargrove noted with approval. "My brother was on that team, sir," Merrick replied, his voice tight with emotion. "Call sign Raptor." Recognition flashed in the general's eyes. "Elijah Merrick, one of our best. I didn't make the connection until now." "I enlisted after his death, sir. Requested sniper training specifically." Hargrove nodded thoughtfully. "Then you'll want to be present for this next part." The helicopter touched down on the landing pad, its rotors slowing as Aviva Nix emerged, rifle case slung over her shoulder. She moved with the fluid economy that marked elite operators, covering ground quickly despite the heavy equipment she carried. 2 security personnel flanked her as she approached the general. "Lieutenant?" Hargrove greeted her with a crisp salute, which she returned precisely. "Impressive shot." "Thank you, sir," Aviva replied, her voice clear and controlled. "Though I had ideal conditions." "Don't diminish the achievement. No one else here could have made it," Hargrove said, before turning serious. "We've secured Blackwood and Reyes. The files you provided have been verified, and additional arrests are underway across 3 continents. Aviva nodded once, her expression revealing nothing. "The others involved, sir?" "The Secretary of Defense has personally authorized the operation. Teams are moving into position now. By this time tomorrow, everyone connected to Shadowfall will be in custody or confirmed neutralized." For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Aviva's face. "Then it wasn't for nothing." "No, Lieutenant. Their sacrifice was not in vain." Hargrove gestured toward the facility. "There are people inside who need to hear what really happened. Are you prepared for that?" "Is that an order, sir?" "A request. These trainees deserve to understand the true cost of integrity in our profession." Aviva considered this, then nodded. "For the record, sir, I didn't come back for redemption or reinstatement." "I know why you came back, Lieutenant," Hargrove replied quietly. "For the same reason you survived when the others didn't, to make sure justice was served." An hour later, the training facility's briefing room was filled beyond capacity. Trainees sat in perfect attention as General Hargrove addressed them from the podium, with Aviva standing rigidly to his right. "What I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels," Hargrove began. "By presidential order, that classification has been temporarily suspended for this briefing only." The general activated the room's projection system, displaying tactical maps and mission parameters. Operation Shadowfall was designed to extract 3 intelligence assets from this compound in Eastern Europe. Lieutenant Nix commanded a 6-person team selected for their exceptional capabilities. Based on intelligence provided through channels vetted by Sergeant Major Blackwood, the team infiltrated at 0200 hours. The display showed night vision footage from helmet cameras. This footage comes from Lieutenant Nix's personal recording. Standard procedure requires all operators to maintain backup recordings separate from central command systems. The room watched in silence as the mission unfolded. The team's methodical approach to the compound. The moment they breached the main building, expecting to find hostages. The instant recognition on the point man's face when he realized they had entered a trap. The footage showed precision fire from all directions, operators falling despite perfect tactical positioning. Lieutenant Nix calling desperately for extraction on a radio that returned only static. "The intelligence was manufactured," Hargrove explained. "The hostages never existed. The entire operation was designed to eliminate this specific team because of another mission they had completed the month before, where they had acquired evidence of high-level corruption within certain military contracting companies." The footage continued, showing Aviva fighting desperately to reach her fallen teammates, performing field medical procedures under continuous fire, ultimately being forced to retreat when ammunition ran critically low. Lieutenant Nix survived by using techniques that, ironically, she learned from Sergeant Major Blackwood years earlier during her initial training. She evaded capture for 3 days while injured, eventually reaching an extraction point where she was recovered by Allied forces. The general paused the footage. What happened next was equally criminal. Upon her return, Lieutenant Nix was immediately detained. Her report was classified. Evidence was fabricated suggesting she had compromised the mission. Her security clearance was revoked, her medals stripped, her career destroyed. Hargrove turned to face Aviva directly. Lieutenant Nix, on behalf of the United States military, I formally apologize for the injustice you endured. Effective immediately, your rank, decorations, and security clearances are fully reinstated, with appropriate back pay and benefits. He removed a velvet case from his aide and opened it to reveal the Distinguished Service Cross. For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy, and for your unwavering commitment to truth and justice in the years that followed, it is my honor to present you with this decoration. As Hargrove pinned the medal to her uniform, the assembled trainees rose as one in a spontaneous standing ovation. Aviva remained at rigid attention, her expression controlled, though those closest could see the slight moisture in her eyes. When the general stepped back from the podium, he gestured for Aviva to speak. The room fell silent as she approached the microphone. "I didn't come back for this," she said simply, her voice clear in the hushed room. "I came back because I made a promise to 5 operators who didn't return. I promised them that the truth would come out, that their families would know they died with honor, not because of negligence or betrayal by their team leader." She looked across the room, making eye contact with several trainees. The lesson here isn't about marksmanship or impossible shots. It's about integrity, about standing by your team no matter what, even when they're gone, even when the entire system turns against you. After the ceremony, the formal proceedings transitioned into a more personal gathering. General Hargrove opened the floor for questions from the trainees, creating a rare opportunity for direct engagement with both high command and a living legend. "Lieutenant Nix," one trainee asked, "how did you maintain your skills during these 3 years?" A ghost of a smile crossed Aviva's face. "I worked security consultation for allied nations who didn't care about my status with our military. Their loss was someone else's gain." Another trainee raised his hand. "The shot today at 3,500 meters. How much of that was skill versus calculation?" "All shooting is calculation," she replied. "The difference between good and exceptional is how many variables you account for. Most marksmen consider wind, elevation, and distance. I was trained to factor in temperature gradients, barometric pressure variations, the Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation, and even the spin drift of the bullet." Specialist Merrick had remained silent until now. "Lieutenant, my brother wrote to me about you before the operation. He said you were the best he'd ever seen, that you could read the wind by watching dust move 500 meters away." Aviva's composure faltered for the first time. "Elijah was the heart of our team. He saved my life twice that night, including taking a round meant for me. The official report said I abandoned them." "I know," Merrick said quietly. "That's why I requested transfer to this program. I needed to understand what happened." The room fell silent as Aviva stepped down from the podium and approached Merrick. From her pocket, she withdrew a worn challenge coin and placed it in his palm. "He gave this to me the day I took command of the team," she said. "Said it was his lucky charm. I've carried it every day since." The formal ceremony had transformed into something more profound. General Hargrove signaled to his aides, who produced bottles of water that were distributed to everyone present. "In our tradition," the general said, raising his bottle, "we toast those who have gone before us. Lieutenant Nix, would you do the honors?" Aviva raised her bottle, her voice clear and strong. "This round is on me. Until Valhalla." The assembled soldiers repeated the toast in unison. "Until Valhalla." Later that evening, as the desert sun set over the Kadara facility, Aviva stood alone at the edge of the training ground, looking toward the distant ridge where she had made her impossible shot. General Hargrove approached quietly, stopping a respectful distance away. "The paperwork is complete," he said. "Full reinstatement, backdated 3 years. The president sends his personal apologies and asks if you would consider returning to active duty." Aviva turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "What capacity?" "Your choice. command of the Advanced Sniper School, special operations, even a staff position developing training protocols. Your experiences, both operational and afterward, give you a unique perspective. She looked back toward the training facility. Those trainees deserve better than what we had. Better preparation, better leadership. Is that a yes, Lieutenant Colonel Nix? Hargrove asked with a small smile. Aviva raised an eyebrow. Lieutenant Colonel? Promotion papers were signed this afternoon, backdated, of course. For the first time that day, Aviva laughed quietly. You were confident I'd accept. I was confident you'd do what serves the greater good, regardless of personal cost. You've demonstrated that repeatedly. She nodded once, decision made. I'll take the training command, but I want to rebuild the program from the ground up. New protocols, new standards. Done, Hargrove said immediately. You'll have full autonomy and whatever resources you need. He paused, then added, There's one more thing. The families of your team members are on secure video conference in the command center. They'd like to speak with you if you're willing. Aviva's expression remained controlled, but emotion flickered behind her eyes. I've been waiting 3 years to tell them the truth. For the next hour, Aviva detailed what had really happened during Operation Shadowfall. She explained how each operator had fought with extraordinary courage, how they had realized they were betrayed but continued the mission anyway, how they had sacrificed themselves to ensure that at least one person survived to tell the truth. Your husbands, your son, your brother, your father, they died with honor, she concluded. Not because of my negligence, as the official report claimed, but because they were betrayed by the very system they served. I made a promise to them that night that I would find out who was responsible and make sure justice was served. Today, that promise was fulfilled. The command center had been cleared of all personnel except for Hargrove's trusted aides. On 5 large screens were the faces of families, spouses, parents, and children of the fallen operators. When Aviva entered, she stood at rigid attention before them. Mrs. Dawson, Mr. and Mrs. Merrick, Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Garcia, Mrs. Patel, she greeted each family formally. I owe you an explanation that's 3 years overdue. Mrs. Dawson, whose husband had been Aviva's second in command, leaned toward her camera. Lieutenant, James always said you were the finest officer he ever served under. We never believed the official story, not for a moment. Thank you for not giving up. One by one, the families expressed similar sentiments. There were tears, but also a palpable sense of relief. The relief that comes with final confirmation of a truth long suspected but denied by authorities. When the conference ended, Aviva remained in her chair, emotionally drained but somehow lighter than she had been in years. Specialist Merrick entered quietly, having been granted permission to speak with his brother's commander privately. Lieutenant Colonel, he said, standing at attention. At ease, Specialist, Aviva replied. Your brother would be proud of you. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Granted. I joined because I wanted to understand what happened to Elijah. I stayed because I wanted to become the kind of operator he was. Now that I know the truth, I'd like to request assignment to your new training program. Aviva studied him thoughtfully. It won't be easy. I intend to set standards higher than anything currently in the books. With respect, ma'am, that's exactly why I'm asking. She nodded once. Request granted, Captain Merrick. His eyes widened. Captain? General Hargrove approved the battlefield commission 10 minutes ago. I need a second in command I can trust. Someone who understands what we're building here and why it matters. 1 year later, the Kadara facility had been renamed the Shadowfall Memorial Training Center. Lieutenant Colonel Aviva Nix's restructured program had quickly gained reputation as the most rigorous and innovative sniper training in the military. Graduates were in high demand across all special operations units, known for both technical excellence and uncompromising integrity. The impossible target that once stood at 3,500 meters had been replaced by 5 identical steel plates, each bearing the name of a fallen Shadowfall operator. Hitting any one of these targets was now the final qualification requirement for program completion. On this particular morning, Lieutenant Colonel Nix stood before her newest class of trainees, the rising sun casting long shadows across the training ground. Distance isn't just about physics, she explained, pacing slowly before the assembled marksmen. It's about patience, about reading the world between you and your objective. Sometimes the hardest targets aren't the farthest away. They're the ones hiding in plain sight. She gestured toward the distant ridgeline. Yesterday, each of you attempted the qualification shot. 3 of you succeeded. That's the highest number in any single class so far. The others will have another opportunity next week. Captain Merrick joined her at the front of the group. Today we're adding a complication. Variable winds at multiple elevations. The flags you see positioned across the range will give you surface indications, but you'll need to calculate the variations at different altitudes. The trainees listened with intense focus as Aviva continued the briefing. In the year since taking command, she had transformed the program's approach to long-range marksmanship, incorporating lessons learned from her time operating independently across various environments worldwide. After dismissing the day's training session, Aviva walked alone to the ridge where she had made her impossible shot 1 year earlier. 5 stone memorials now stood in a semicircle, facing the setting sun. Each bore the name, rank, and call sign of an operator lost in Operation Shadowfall. It had become her daily ritual to visit this place. She placed a single rifle cartridge on each stone, a sniper's tribute to fallen comrades. As she completed the ritual, she became aware of someone waiting at a respectful distance. A young recruit stood at parade rest, clearly nervous about approaching the legendary commander but determined nonetheless. "Lieutenant Colonel Nix," the recruit began. "Permission to ask a question, ma'am?" Aviva nodded once. "Granted." "Is it true what they say? That you made that shot from over 3 miles away with a standard-issue rifle?" Aviva studied the eager face before her, recognizing the same hunger for excellence that had once driven her, the same desire to push beyond established limitations. "The rifle was custom," she corrected, "but the distance was accurate. What was going through your mind when you took the shot?" Aviva looked back toward the memorial stones. "I wasn't thinking about the shot. I was thinking about a promise I made to 5 operators who trusted me with their lives, that no matter how long it took, I would make sure the truth came out." She turned back to the recruit. "The shot doesn't matter. What matters is standing by your people, in the field and afterward. Some targets you can see. Others take longer to find. But justice always finds its mark eventually." The recruit nodded seriously, absorbing the lesson. "Now," Aviva said with the ghost of a smile, "if you want to learn how to make that shot consistently, report to the long-range qualification course at 0500 tomorrow. Captain Merrick and I will be running a special session for anyone willing to put in the extra work." As the recruit hurried away, Aviva remained by the memorial stones, watching as the setting sun painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, she could see the training facility buzzing with activity, the next generation of elite marksmen preparing for whatever challenges awaited them. She placed her hand briefly on the center memorial stone, the one bearing the name of Elijah Raptor Merrick. "We're making it count," she said quietly, "just like you asked." Then she turned and walked back toward the facility, ready to continue the work of transforming tragedy into legacy, of ensuring that what was broken could be rebuilt stronger than before. The wind picked up slightly as she walked, and without conscious thought, she noted its direction and velocity, a sniper's instinct that never truly faded. But for the first time in 3 years, the weight of the past felt lighter on her shoulders. Justice had found its mark. The impossible shot had been made, and somewhere, she believed, 5 warriors were at peace.